friends, and welcome back to another episode of Just a Guy in the Pew. I am your host, John Edwards, and as always, I'm overjoyed to be joining you during your week, whether you're cutting the grass, working out, going to work, coming home from work, whatever it is. Thank you for spending the time with me here. Victor is out this week, so I'm going to be doing a solo episode, but I'm so excited to do it because today's topic is going to be something that the Lord just keeps putting in front of me. It's really the heart of our ministry, and I'm just so excited to talk to you all about it. And we're going to jump into that in just a second. But first, I just want to take a moment to ask all of you, whether you've been watching or listening for a long time or you just started, to take a moment to like and subscribe to either our YouTube channel or whatever podcast platform you're listening to. That really helps us get this out there. The more you like it, share, subscribe, the more the content's out there, and it helps us reach our ultimate goal, which is to bring more people to Christ, to help more people see that they matter, right? To help them see that there's another way out of whatever struggles they face, whatever darkness they might be in the middle of, and that there's hope in Jesus Christ for all of us, and the call to community. And that's what we're really going to be talking about today. So before we begin, just take a moment to like and subscribe and to share. And folks, that would mean a great deal to us in getting this message out there to more people. But folks, I've been really excited about this. And in fact, I've tried to do this episode for the last couple of days, and, spiritual warfare and all things kept jumping in the way. And honestly, it was a good thing because it wound up, I think, a little bit completely different in my heart than what it was going to be at first. But I really want to talk to you today about the call to care, right? The call to care for one another. This is something that we oftentimes speak of about, like, we know this is what we're supposed to be doing as Christians, as disciples. We know this is the call of Christ, is to call, to love, to disciple, to accompany. But oftentimes our words are words. They're not always backed up with actions. And this really hit me in a profound way this week. After I was walking with a young man I've been walking with for a long time. We met the other day and we were talking. And, we'd been going through some struggles. Guys in his 20s and trying to figure out life and, what he's going to be doing and what the Lord has for him and the rest of his life and marriage and all these different things and discerning all the things that we do when we're younger. And he just had a troubled heart. And we were talking and I just asked him, I said, what is it that you really want more than anything? And, just to hear this honest answer that he gave me just reminded me of exactly what we're supposed to be doing as Christians and why we're here. And he said, John, all I want in my heart is I want to be cared for. I want someone to care that I exist. I want someone to see me and to care enough to listen to me, to take time to hear me, to be there for me. And I want to do the same for them. He said, ultimately, John, I just want to matter. I want to know that someone cares for me. And folks, isn't this the desire of all of our hearts? Right? Isn't it the desire of all of our hearts to know deep down that we're seen, we're loved, we're heard, that we matter? Like, I don't care how tough we are or how many facades we put up or how many walls we want to put up about how tough we are and what it means to be a man and all the different things I can do that make me a man. And our heart's desire, our purest desire, there's a call to communion. There's a call to want to matter, to be in relationship with one another. And this started in the beginning, like what he was doing was expressing the desires of all of our hearts. At our core, we all want to matter to somebody. What we really long for is communion. We long for communion with God and with others. I mean, that's what we were originally made for. It says so in the Catechism. This is one of my favorite paragraphs in the Catechism. In paragraph 27, it says, the desire for God is written in the human heart because man is created by God and for God. And God never ceases to draw man to himself. Only in God will he find the truth and happiness he never stops searching for. The dignity of man rests above all on the fact that he is called to communion with God. This invitation to converse with God is addressed to man as soon as he comes into being. For if man exists, it is because God has created him through love, and through love continues to hold him in existence. He cannot live fully according to the truth unless he freely acknowledges that love and entrusts himself to his Creator. Isn't that beautiful? The desire for God is written on all of our hearts. And it was from the beginning. We were made for communion. And this is exactly what we lost in the garden. So many people will try to figure out, what does it mean this fall? What does it mean to me? Right? I get that Adam and Eve made a mistake and that, there's sin and death and suffering came into the world and we all pay the price for that today and that Jesus came to die for us and to restore us into that communion. right, into that relationship with God. But what we really miss is the fact that we were created into that communion. Grace abounded, right? God's love flowed through one another for Adam and Eve, and his grace flowed through his communion that we had with him. That's what we originally lost, right? We chose ourselves over God, and through that choice, we lost communion with him, right? And our hearts have longed for that ever since. And here's the thing. It's in communion with others that we find communion with God. Yes, in the sacraments and all of those things as well. But ultimately, we find God in one another. That's how we see God. In community, right? An offshoot of the word communion, right? Community, where we accompany one another, where we walk with each other, where we actually begin to care for one another. Like, this is what we all long for. This is what we're all looking for. We find communion, the communion that we desire, that we long for, through accompaniment. That's really what this young man was saying. He's like, I want to be accompanied. I want to walk with somebody. I don't want to do life alone. I don't want to be lonely. I don't want to be isolated anymore. I don't want to do life by myself. And isn't that where we are in the church today? I mean, there's statistics all over the place. 31% of men, they say that they don't have one real friend in their life. Like, we live in a world that tries to separate us, right? That tries to get us to be isolated and alone, to listen to all the negative self-talk and all those things, and to beat ourselves down. And all we want at the end of the day is for someone to tell us that we matter. We want somebody to give a crap that we exist. We want to be loved. We want to be brought into communion. But we'll never find that if we first don't have something important, the call to care, right? We have to begin to care about others. We live in a world that calls us to care only about ourselves, right? Everything is about take care of yourself first, right? See to yourself, get what you want, and then worry about other people. And then you're able to give, and then you're able to do that. But you know what happens? Oftentimes we become very selfish. And the true call of Christianity to come out of ourselves doesn't manifest in ourselves, because we become so selfish and so self-centered, right? Looking to our own needs and our own wants, and doing the seeing to ourselves first thing, that we forget to truly live out the call of Christianity. It's the call to care. We find communion through accompaniment. But the problem is, most of us aren't great at accompaniment. Heck, the fact is, our church isn't really great at accompaniment. That's why we are so busy going around the country starting these groups for men, where they could find accompaniment, where they could walk with other people, where they could be discipled and disciple others, where they could be seen, loved, and heard, where they could find a place where they matter, where people care when they show up and care when they don't. Right? This is what we all long for, is a community, a place where we could belong. That's where we find Christ. That's where we find our way back to God, is through one another. You know, when we started our men's group 9 years ago, people were becoming Catholic left and right. People off the streets, Protestants, people who didn't know God at all, they were finding their way into our group because people's lives were being changed that they worked with in their family, relationships they had outside of church because they didn't go. Right? And all of a sudden they see a change in somebody, and they said, what's changed? And the person said, I'm going to this place where I found community, where I can belong, where I feel seen, loved, and heard, where I matter, and where I can help other people find that themselves. And in that, people said, well, I want that too. And they came, and guess what? They found the beauty of the faith. They found a relationship with Christ. They found a relationship with other people. They found a place where they mattered. They found a place where people were called to care for them and were answering that call. That's what makes a difference. That's what brings people into relationship. That's what introduces people to Christ, into a place where they can thrive. They can live in their gifting. They can start to believe that they are more than the sum of their sins. That's what our church needs more than anything, is true community. We have the sacraments, we have the rituals, we have the regulations, the rules, we have all the beautiful things that the church gives us in its beauty and its wisdom to draw closer to Christ. But if it first doesn't start with a call to care for one another, then all of that doesn't matter. People never get to that point. They never see the beauty of those things if they're not first invited into a relationship by someone who decided to answer the call to care. For somebody that wanted, who dared to, who stepped out of themselves to care, to accompany the other person. This is the longing of my heart. This is the desire of our ministry, is to help people understand this call. right? That the call to discipleship is at its base a call to care, a call to love. But the thing is, you can't begin to love if you first don't begin to care, to come out of yourself. Christianity is about receiving a gift and then becoming a gift yourself. Like understanding what's been given, finding that and receiving that gift in gratitude, and then giving it in generosity to other people. I'm not just talking about money and things like that. I mean your time, your talent, your treasures, yourself, giving your very self to other people. But this is the problem. We struggle to meet people where they're at because it requires us to care, to come out of ourselves and our own orbits. And it's difficult because the entire time that we've been raised, even if you've been raised in the church, the pull of the world, the flesh of the devil is so strong to care about yourself. The devil tricks you into worrying that if you're not caring about yourself, you're not going to have enough, that God won't provide for you. So you got to see to yourself and your wants and your needs and put you and your family first. And look, that is rightly ordered, God, family, and others. But at some point, the others have to come, right? We can't stop at God and our family. The call is then to turn and give the gift. That's what Jesus said before he took the cloud elevator to heaven, right? On ascension, he said to go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, to give what you've been given. And this is why so many of us feel so hollow and empty in our life. While we feel like we go without peace. Is because we sit there and we're like, I'm doing this thing. I'm going to church. I'm going through doing all the things I'm supposed to do. But if we're not giving to others, if we're not drawing others into community, if we're not communing ourselves with others, then we find ourselves without peace. We find ourselves without purpose. We find ourselves losing joy, lacking joy. Because it is in the giving and the receiving, in the accompanying, in the walking with one another, in true discipleship, that we find that joy, that the sap flows through the branches and through the vine, right? Where we find true purpose and we bear fruit that lasts. That's where the joy and the purpose of our life comes from. And this is what St. Teresa of Calcutta, Mother Teresa herself says. She says this: if we have no peace, it is because we've forgotten that we belong to one another. It's that we have forgotten that we belong to one another, that we need communion with each other, that we need community. That's what the original church was, were people coming together in the face of persecution, in the face of danger, in the face of trials, and above all, loving God and loving one another, giving everything they had to one another, putting the other first. That's the call of Jesus. That's the call of the commandments, right? This is what Jesus says in Matthew 22, 36 through 40. He says, Teacher, they ask him, Teacher, what is the greatest commandment in the law? And he said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and foremost commandment. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Upon these two commandments hang the whole law and the prophets. Love God and love your neighbor as yourself. He goes on to say in Matthew 25:40, truly I say to you, as you did to one of the least of my brethren, you did unto me. Jesus was about relationship. He was about accompaniment, right? Yes, he had his one-off amazing events like the Sermon on the Mount, right? The Sermon on the Mount, the greatest sermon ever. He gave this, but he didn't stop there. It wasn't like we try to do in the church sometimes. We're like, well, we'll just have a retreat, or we'll have a conference, or we'll have a one-day thing that's going to save everybody. And while those are good and people, they have their purpose and people come to know the Lord through those things, Jesus walked off of that mount through the greatest sermon ever delivered, and he went right back to accompanying people. It's the reason you and I are here. He accompanied 12 men. He accompanied 72 men. He accompanied thousands of people that went out and changed the world. And it's why you and I are here today, because he built community and he poured himself into that community, right? It wasn't just about one-off events. It wasn't just about programs. It wasn't just about all those things. It was about doing the hard thing, which is true accompaniment, right? Paul says this in Galatians. He says, for you were called to freedom, brothers. Only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, for yourself, right? But through love, servants of one another. But through love, become servants of one another. For the whole law is fulfilled in one word. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. That's Galatians 5:13 through 14. Philippians 2:4, he echoes that again. He says, let each of you look not only to his own interest, but also to the interest of others. And again, this is where we struggle to meet people, because we struggle to come out of ourselves, out of our own orbits. The bottom line is, that accompaniment, communion requires accompaniment. And accompaniment requires that you care. It requires that you start to give a damn about somebody other than yourself. And I'm not saying that everybody out there is selfish, right? I'm not saying that. But in all of us, we can go through the motions of Christianity and forget that the ultimate call of Christianity is to die to oneself, to pick up your cross, and to follow Christ and bring others with you, right? To come out of yourself and to be a gift. You have to care about Christ and others more than you do yourself. And people did that for me. As I look back, the very reason I'm talking to you today is because people decided to care about me. Right? Jesus, first and foremost, decided to get on that cross, to give his life, to undergo his passion, to go through all of that for me. And not only that, he showed up in a jail cell 9 years ago on the verge of me taking my own life to tell me that there were other options, that I wasn't the sum of my sins. He showed up to accompany me even in that, even when I had turned away from him. He showed up again to welcome me back into his love and back into communion with him and his Father. A few hours later, that same day, my wife shows up when she could have run from me, when she could have walked, just taken off from me and taken everything, my children, everything that we had in our lives, and left me there to just be in my own mistakes and sins. And yet, again, even though she was hurt, even though it was hard for her to do, even though she didn't want to give me a second chance in the moment, she had a communion with God. She had a relationship with God, and that relationship with God informed her to care about me more than she cared about herself in that moment. And she gave me an opportunity to stay with her. After that, Father Martel, a priest that didn't have to care for me, right? Could have just gone about his regular duties, delivering the sacraments, writing homilies, trying to figure out how to run and pay for a church. He could have stopped at those things, but one day he saw me, a guy crying in a church. And instead of walking out to whatever appointments he had or whatever else, he stopped and he asked me what was going on. And then he took me into the confessional, and he's been walking with me every day since then. I'm here today in front of you, sharing this call with you because someone cared enough to care about me. Someone cared enough to put aside everything else in their life to begin to walk with me. And that changed everything. That made the gospel become real to me. I saw Jesus in people. And it made me want to become Jesus to other people. It's the reason I turn on this mic every week. It's the reason I get on a plane every other weekend to go and to help people come to know Jesus, is because that's my responsibility. That's the only response to what's been done for me. It's the call to bring people into the same communion, to restore them into right relationship with God the Father and Christ the Son. Well, hey, folks, thanks for checking out today's episode on the Call to Care and Accompaniment. Folks, this is the heart of our ministry. This is what God has called us to do for his kingdom. This is what we're striving to do each and every day. We want to ensure that every parish and every diocese has a place where men can go to feel seen, loved, and heard, to find out that they matter, where they could build authentic relationship with Jesus Christ and other men, where they could find communion and community. Folks, every parish needs this. No parish should go without it. And the only way that happens is if you decide to accompany us. I'm asking you now to consider becoming a monthly partner in the Pew. You could do that by going to justaguyinthepew.com and clicking donate. Through your financial support, we will ensure that every parish that contacts us has an opportunity to build a place like this where men can be seen, loved, and heard, and where they can become the men they're called to be. So please consider donating to us, accompanying us in this mission so we can do what God has asked and help more men. Go to justaguyinthepew.com to donate today. Now back to the show. This isn't just a call for everybody else. It's a call for each and every one of us. And it requires that we care. Accompaniment takes time. It's an investment in another. It's a call to care or to come out with on oneself for the sake of another. That's why so many people struggle, because the focus is more on the cost than it is the call. What is this going to cost me? And we've all felt that, right? When you know somebody needs something, you're like, man, I don't want to get involved, because if I do, then I'm going to have to start walking with this person, and I'm going to have to answer phone calls when it's not convenient for me. I'm going to get texts all the time. This guy's problem is going to become my own. Well, yes, that's what it means to love one another. That's what it means to care. Right? And it's the greatest joy you will ever have. It's not a burden. That's the evil one trying to keep you from helping someone because he doesn't want to lose another soul. And so he has us focus on the cost. What is it going to cost me to actually care for this person? And we look at that and we become fearful and we choose ourselves over another person. But St. Ignatius of Loyola, he says this, teach us to give and not count the cost. And not count the cost. If we can get past the cost, we can get to the reward for that person and ultimately also for ourselves, because we will receive the joy and the purpose that we all long for, because we're finally doing what we're asked to do. We're not just supposed to go and sit in pews and go up, down, left, right, BA, start. That's actually the code for Contra when I was a kid in a Nintendo game. So sorry for confusion there. But that's what it feels like sometimes. And we're just going through the motions and we're wondering, like, what is the true purpose of all of this? It's to bring people into a relationship, to find relationships yourself, to build community, to accompany one another, and to help all of us step up higher and step closer to Christ so that we could change our own lives, the lives of others, our parishes, our communities, the world, the culture, everything. That's the call. That's the great adventure of being a Catholic, of being a Christian. And so if we're not feeling that, it's because honestly, most of us aren't giving the time to serve one another, to be there, to build real community. I sat in our men's group last night and we talked about the lies and listening to the wrong voices and the difficulty we could have with all the terrible thoughts and the lies the devil puts on our heart. And I watched, 15, 16 men of all different ages talk about how we all face those same things and how they deal with it and how they answer it and how they figured out what their triggers are and how they respond. And you could see other men growing in that moment because men are opening up. They're vulnerable. They're authentic. They're sharing. They care enough to be there, not only to receive, but to give. And that rising tide raises all ships. We come to the Lord together. We raise up together. We rise up together. But it doesn't happen if we don't ever care. This is where the rubber meets the road in Christianity. Right? Again, the examples I showed you, Father Martel, my wife, Jesus, so many other people that have cared to walk with me, right? Who have taken the time when they didn't have to, in the midst of all their other things, to walk with me, to guide me, to care for me, to be there in my moments of brokenness, to be there in my moments of joy. That's what accompaniment is. And the good times and the bad, not only in our marriages, but with each other. This is what our church is missing and what we sorely need. And this is where the rubber meets the road in Christianity. It's not just about the rituals and the practices. It is literally about doing what Christ asked us to do. He called us to make disciples, to love one another as he loved us, to pass on the gift that we have been given so that others may know him. But see, the thing is, guys, we keep trying to find other ways to do that. We keep going, well, there's got to be another way than to actually have to spend time with people, to accompany people. But the thing is, true communion, it starts with caring for other people and caring for them well. You can't accompany people if you don't begin to care. You can't begin to love if you don't begin to first care for people. This is what it's all about. We're never going to find any other way to convert people other than accompaniment. This is what Jesus did himself. But we continue to try to come out with the next greatest thing or the next greatest program or some other way because honestly, accompanying people is hard. Like I said, it is an investment of your time. And ultimately, we don't want to give up our time. We don't want to take on the problems of other people. And that is not the call of a Christian. The call of a Christian is to do just that. We have to come out of ourselves and remember the gift we've been given and then become a gift ourselves by passing it on. This is the heart of everything. Our church is bad at accompaniment right now. It really is. 86% of our parishes don't even have places of accompaniment for men. Right? And then we wonder why men are lost and why they're struggling and why they're alone and why the suicide rate's so high and why so many of us are out there self-medicating and turning to other things that are destroying our lives is because we simply believe we don't matter. And there aren't places where we can go to figure out that we do. And it's guys like you and me that we don't have to have theology degrees. We don't have to be to seminary. We have to know the Lord and just believe in what he's called us to do and then care enough to walk with someone and to figure it out together. I guarantee you the disciples felt confused, alone, sometimes like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing, but I'm just going to follow Jesus and you're with me and I'm with you and let's go do it together. And they did amazing things. The 72 returned and they talked about all the things they did through the name of Christ and through the power of the Holy Spirit and the things that the Lord had given them and the instruction he had given them, and they walked together to do it. We're all searching for purpose and joy. We all want to matter. And the thing that is missing is answering the call to care. Jesus instructed us to love. You can't begin to love if you never start to care. You can never get outside of yourself or your selfishness if you never begin to care. The ultimate goal is to love like Christ, but it doesn't begin if you don't care. St. Augustine says this, what does love look like? It has the hands to help others. It has the feet to hasten to the poor and needy. It has eyes to see misery and want. It has the ears to hear the sighs and sorrows of men. That is what love looks like. That is what the gospel is all about, is love. From the beginning, when God created us in communion with one another and with him to love one another, we have the grace that flowed through all of that. We made a mistake and God has chased after us all of these centuries and years to continue to bring us love up to the point of where he gave something that he loved more than you, his very son, to call us back into community. That son took on flesh in a humble way as a child, in a manger, born in poor circumstances, lived in poor circumstances for 33 years, and then went out with nothing and began to preach the gospel, to give the truth to others, to bring people into accompaniment, right? Where do you live, teacher? Come and see. Wait, do you want to be healed, right? What do you seek? What are you looking for? All of these were calls to relationship, to accompaniment. Like I said, he gave the greatest sermon ever, but he came off of that mount and he continued to accompany each other, to accompany the people, and then he called us to accompany others the way that he did. That is the only way we could convert souls. That is the only way we convert the culture. That is the only way that we win this world back for Christ, is through accompaniment, through the call to care. Christianity comes to its truest form. Christianity comes to its truest form when it draws us out of ourselves. When we stop looking at our needs and our wants and what we want and just trusting in the provision of God, and we start answering the call to communion, the call to community, first and foremost with God the Father through the Son, and then through one another. This is where we meet Jesus. The other night when I was talking to that young man, he had so many issues in his life. He had struggled with thoughts of suicide. He'd struggled with thoughts of loneliness and isolation. And thank God he went to confession, and a priest told him that he needed to go see some people. He reached out to me and I walked with him. I've been walking with him for years, but we talked about this. And let me tell you something. Let me tell you one time when I failed him. This is something I didn't know if I was going to bring up, but I am. One day I was sitting in the church before morning mass, and I was sitting there, I was praying, and my phone started going off, and it was all this stuff through the ministry and all these things I needed to get done, and I had a busy day of calls and family stuff and stuff outside of work, and it was just going to be a jam-packed day. And so I was like, I got to answer these things right now and give people the answer they need before mass starts, because I don't want to mess with it through mass. Well, this young man came up to me, he started talking to me, and he was just like, hey, how you doing? And he was telling me about his life, and I was like, yeah, and I was answering him. But I was paying more attention to my phone. I was paying more attention to trying to get through these things because they were what's important than the young man, the same one I'm telling you that wanted to matter, that wanted to care. He's sitting there trying to talk to me, and I cared more about other things that didn't matter than I did him in that moment. And so when I was talking to him the other night, and he was just telling me this desire of his heart to matter, to want to be seen, loved, and heard, to want to have people actually care for him, it hit me that I had failed him that way that day. And a tear came to my eye, and I just started to sob. And he said, what's the matter? And I said, man, I got to tell you something. I remember a day not long ago when you came up to me and you were talking about things and you were so joyous and happy, and you were just trying to tell me about your life and what you had going on. And honestly, I was too busy doing other things to receive you, and I didn't care for you well. And I'm sure that made you feel unimportant. And I'm sorry that I didn't make you feel cared for and seen, loved, and heard in that moment. And he looked up at me and he said, you know what? He said, it's all right, John. He goes, at least you cared enough to think about it, to be here now, to realize what happened in that moment and to apologize for it. And that means more to me than it ever did that you were busy with other things that day. I tell you that because if we're not careful, folks, we're going to miss the opportunities that are right in front of us each and every day to accompany people, to truly care, to truly live the call of a Christian. Right? At the end of the day, that's what it is. We look for these grand moments to do heroic things, to feel that we've done something, monumentous for the faith or for Jesus. But they're right in front of us each and every moment. How many people are we passing every single day that are hurting, that are struggling, that need us, that need to see Jesus, and the only way they're going to see him is through us? Right? We go to communion, we receive the Eucharist, we commune with the Lord so that we can become in communion with him and bring other people to community, to communion with him through us. That's what restoration to the Father is all about. That's the call of Christianity. It's the call to care. Our job is to bring people back to communion, to help everyone, including ourselves, to feel seen, loved, and heard, to help everyone know they matter to Jesus and to each other. St. John of the Cross says this, where there is no love, put love, and you will find love. That's the beauty of Christianity. The call is to give until you have nothing left to give, but it frightens us because we go, well, then what's left? If I give everything, what will I have left? Well, guess what? The person that you're going to give to is going to give you everything too. That's what community is. It's reciprocal. That's what accompaniment is. It's walking with each other. Just like Paul and Timothy and Silas and Mark and Luke, all of those guys walked together and it was give and take. It wasn't just Paul giving and never receiving. True discipleship, true accompaniment is being there for each other and giving and receiving. That's where we're always filled up. You don't want to be like the Dead Sea, right? There are 2 seas there in Galilee that you visit on a pilgrimage. There's the Dead Sea, and it's dead. It's full of salt. Nothing lives there because there's nothing flowing out and there's nothing flowing in. And that's how so many of us are in our faith life right now. We're like the Dead Sea. We're going through the motions. We're checking all the boxes. We're going through everything we're told to do. But ultimately, we have nothing pouring in and nothing pouring out. We need to be like the Sea of Galilee, full of fish, full of life, where Jesus taught so many of his lessons and lived and surrounded it throughout his ministry. Because there's water that flows in and there's water that flows out. That's what our life is supposed to be. That's what accompaniment is. That is what true communion is. Receiving the grace of the Lord flowing into us and then allowing that grace to flow out of us into another and receiving it as it reciprocates, it comes back to us. That's the call to care. That's the call to love. That's the call to community. That's the call to accompaniment. This is what's missing in our church. This is what's missing in all of our hearts. And it's never going to be different until each and every one of us start to stand up and go, you know what? Today, right now, I'm going to decide to start caring. I'm going to look at my life and I'm going to take a measure of it all. Where am I giving? Where am I spending time? Is my life all about myself? Is it just me and Jesus and no one else? Am I telling myself lies that I don't have enough time, that I don't have enough things to give to people, that I don't have talents or treasures, that I don't have gifts, that I can't use the things that the Lord has given me to help others? It's time to stop those lies. It's time to start believing the truth of what Jesus has told us about ourselves so that we can go out and live the way that we're called to live. The only way that happens is by answering the call to care, the call to love, the call to communion, and to decide to start accompanying one another along the way. This is the goal of our ministry. This is the heart of our ministry, is to build places in churches where people like you, like people like me, can find accompaniment. I would not be the man I am right now if it weren't for those men each and every Wednesday that I'm in a group with. That care for me, that are there for me, and that I have an opportunity each and every week to care for and be there for them. The bottom line is, folks, you're not alone. There are people that will care for you. There are plenty of people that need you to care for them. There's a place for you. You matter. There's a place for you in the church. There's a place for you in the Father's heart. But we have to start answering the call to care together. We got to stop just doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. That's the definition of crazy, right? We don't need more programs. We don't need more things like that. We need people to simply begin to care for one another, to accompany one another, to help each other heal wounds, and to call each other to walk with each other through healing and restoration. That is my hope for you. That is my call to you, to begin right now looking past what you see as your shortcomings or your failures and begin to believe that God can use you to accompany others and that there are people out there willing to accompany you. If you want us to help you do that, then stop beating around the bush. Get on your phone, get on your laptop, go to Just a Guy in the Pew, fill out the form, and let's start building places in your church, in your parish, in your life where you can begin to give and you can begin to receive from others. We can build true communities for Jesus Christ that heal us, that restore us, and help us change the world. That's my hope for you. That's the hope for me. And God bless. I hope you all do it. I love you all. Thanks for listening to this. And I hope that this has moved your heart in some way to begin to answer the call to care. Let's take it to prayer in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, you created us for communion. You put us in that garden to commune with one another and to commune with you, to feel the grace that flowed through that and have a power that you want us to have all of our life. Lord, because of the mistakes of choosing ourselves, we lost that. But it is your desire for us to regain it again through your Son, Jesus Christ, through his call to the cross to give us that gift of salvation, but also each and every day to walk with each other in love. You ask us to care for one another. You ask us to put others first, to love them like we love ourselves. Lord, help us to do that each and every day. Give us the resolve, the fortitude, the desire to go and to live in that way. Lord, we ask your Holy Spirit to come alive in each and every one of us, to empower us, to enact the gifts that you've given us, to go out, to reach other people and to live in community and to answer the call to accompaniment. Mother Mary, see all this to fruition. Saint Joseph, keep away the evil one. And Lord Jesus, make this possible through your love and through the Father's grace. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.